Hello, I'm John Paget. I made the film you're watching, and I live here in Buffalo.
Hi, I'm Andres Duany. I'm an urbanist, and I'm not from Buffalo. I'm from Miami, and I've only been here actually about 24 hours.
Welcome to Buffalo. I'm glad you're here to join us and give a little bit of commentary on the film. You know, in this opening shot, I tried to establish that Buffalo was a Great Lakes city. Chris Hawley mentions it was a big reason we became an important city in the early part of the American story, and why we may become a big important city again in the 21st century. I was wondering if you could elaborate on why Great Lakes cities are going to become increasingly important deeper into the 21st century.
Well, you know, Kunstler, just to take the most apocalyptic possible view, says that we need the water cities are the ones that are going to thrive because we're going to go back to waterborne transportation, because flying things around and even driving them around the truck fleets are going to be too expensive. And one of his suggestions is that we don't gentrify the waterfronts entirely, because we're going to need them again for their original purpose. And so a city as well located as this might actually revert to its natural advantage. Of course, this film, what it does, it actually promotes the waterfront as a place of leisure and beauty, which, yes, of course, that's the way we've been looking at this in the 20th century, after the industry receded, you know, and liberated the waterfronts. But it may be that you still, well, I would recommend you still keep some port facilities for loading and unloading. You might have a Great Lakes fleet again.
The settlement patterns in our community came
Of course,
up from...
now we're looking at, you know, some of the street design, and street design can be an arcane and esoteric topic for the ordinary person, but how does street design affect the life of a city?
Well, there's a lot of belief that the fundamentals of a city, medieval cities with their crooked streets, are the source of their beauty, that the grandeur of Washington, and of course this one was designed by the same people as Washington with their diagonals, gives rise to a monumental city of extraordinary elegance, like this photograph. You know, your monuments are seen from many different angles. So in Charleston, there's a church seen from one angle, that's one of our pseudo-medieval cities. Here, your towers are seen from many angles. So there's a great belief in that, but actually what interested the urbanists is not really the grandeur and beauty of the cities as much as are they really comfortable for people. So when we look at streets, we look at streets from the ground. What are they like to be in? Those are the public spaces of America. My opinion of the streets I've probably walked 2-3 hours in your best neighborhoods, is that they're as good as any I have ever seen. Okay, so your best neighborhoods are as good as the best. They're right up there with the best work done in the first 20 years of the 20th century. Now, one thing about the waterfront, I really would like to get back to. I come from a city that's also a waterfront city, and our value, the value of our real estate, is entirely up against the waterfront. That's where all the high rises are. And then behind it, there's a sharp drop-off in value. And the demographics are astonishing. Because this was an industrial city at the beginning, your waterfront is still available. When I look at your high-rises, they're actually not at the waterfront, hogging the waterfront. The waterfront's still free. And that's unusual. Now, what may happen as you become more successful is that the developers will want to put all their high buildings in the waterfront, you know, like Vancouver or Toronto. And I don't know whether that's good or bad. I expect you're going to have to accept that. But I wouldn't particularly expect that your downtown with its empty lots, you know, in Lafayette Park, are going to be the prime sites that the resurgence of Buffalo is going to bring. That's not what they're going to be looking for. They're going to be looking for the waterfront. And I think that, I haven't seen your master plan, although I do know it received an award from CNU. I wasn't at the jury, so I haven't seen it. But I think getting ahead of of that waterfront, really ahead, concentrating on it, assumed it's going to want to be developed. Just decide how it's going to happen. Is it going to be like Vancouver, with thin towers that allow the second and third echelon to see past to the water? Or is it going to be like Miami, in which the first echelon of buildings basically hogs the view, and then there's nothing behind it? You know, that's a decision to be made. Because Buffalo is late in developing its waterfront. I mean, really later than Toronto, later than Seattle, later than Vancouver, you have a chance to actually kick the tires of the other cities and see, I'd like to be more like this one or that one.
Architects Frank Lloyd Wright, H.H. Richardson, and Louis Sullivan. The grid overlaid with the radial streets provides you with these fantastic building sites that really attract great architects to do their best work.
And that is all integrated within incredible, walkable, compact neighborhoods.
So when you go down the streets of Buffalo, you're going to see, yeah, holy cow, there's a house by Frank Lloyd Wright, my gosh, but you're going to see lining the streets really wonderful and sometimes touching.
We watched a bit about the Olmstead Park system. Maybe comment on that for the future of Buffalo. How important is that?
Well, the Olmstead Park system is famous here. Speaking of mistakes, yes, and you've actually ruined it more than virtually any other Olmstead Park system. I am amazed at these people speaking, smiling, instead of in fury. You know, when I was taken to see these hideous highways, and they said, oh, by the way, this used to be the finest lineal parkway that Olmstead ever did, I basically blew my top. And here you have this wonderful fellow, Tim, smiling. I don't know. I don't get it.
I think it's because it's so depressing you have to laugh.
Yeah, but that's what the Latin Americans do. I don't think it works. I think you have to get angry.
Well, here you have anger.
That's it. Yeah, that's right. I noticed she was angry. Just when I was about to complain, I said, that's the spirit. Well, get angry.
The question is, can it be fixed? What will it take? And how do we do it?
Well, I did spend a lot of time with Tim driving around, and he was, whenever he showed me what has been achieved, I also asked him how long did it take, you know, because there's, and for example, that circular pool that was, that we saw the kids playing in, you know, in the Olmstead Park, which is great, but boy, did that take a long time. And I think you have to absolutely get over this. You cannot take 10 years to get stuff done. You know, that's just absolutely, there's something about the last quarter of the 20th century that we became completely incompetent, you know, in terms of getting things done efficiently. The 21st century doesn't have the time, doesn't have the means. You know, we can't self-indulge in taking too long to do things. And I think one of the problems is that when Tim was telling me what was being achieved, and by the way, this park here is wonderful. I love this place.
This is Larkinville.
Larkinville, and it was done with very few resources. You know, I really thought this was lean urbanism, which is one of the things that, you know, that square with its pop-up shops and its very light wooden engineering is one of the themes of the next CNU, which is lean urbanism. And I got out of the car and I was just photographing everything about it. But you also, things have also take time. And I was thinking that it's perhaps because the battles that you're fighting are too small. And you know, the old Burnham statement that make no little plans because they don't have the power to basically fire up men's minds wasn't just a cute statement. You know, what I've noticed is that when people do small things, or they're attempting to fix something which is limited, there's a lot of talk. But if you have a really magnificent vision, somehow it's easier, it's paradoxical. Those highways were put in because there was a really magnificent vision. What happened is that the radical propositions that ruined Buffalo, you say, how did they get through? Everybody was against them because there were magnificent visions. And I think the one lesson you can take from those highways is to have magnificent visions. Like, don't tinker with things. You know, also do the big things. You know, I think you can get a lot of people behind the controversy of burying the highway or surfacing it, putting it on the surface, like a Parisian boulevard. You know, some of the great streets in the world are fully as wide as that highway, but they're on the surface and they're designed with a conception of Paris or Washington. And of course you say, well, isn't that expensive? Yes, of course it's expensive, but it's less expensive than burying it. You know, this isn't a Boston big dig. That didn't go well. That was too expensive. But you can just fill it with dirt, you know, and then just surface it. And it could be a pretty magnificent highway. I think the bones are great, really great. Last night, I was up till 3 o'clock in the morning, and I actually went to 3 neighborhood centers, beautifully spaced, good restaurants, just like this. But being normal, no musicians, just people out, and it was really, really, really great. There's also, I was also shown really pretty questionable neighborhoods that are almost not worth reviving, partially because they weren't that good in the first place. You know, the really, really, really working class Irish neighborhoods. I know it's nice and so forth, but you have so much better stuff that actually, you know, you say, what's next up? Now that the best neighborhoods are back, you know, the best designed, the natural thing is to get the next best and then the next best, instead of going immediately to the most difficult proposition, you know.
You're talking about triage.
I'm talking about triage. I'm talking about, you know, cities, American cities have gone through a war, and you can see it. It looks like a war. They've been demolished. There's abandonment, and triage is that concept that say there's too many wounded soldiers. We can't, and we have too few doctors, too few means. We can only save a few. So you basically allocate and say, well, these are the ones that can be saved. A third can absolutely be saved, and a third cannot be saved. So instead of spending your medical means to save the ones that won't be saved anyway, you simply, you know, you triage. It's what happens after a battle. And I think the analogy of warfare is what happened to the American cities in the 50s. They were devastated.
But you said that we can't triage here in Buffalo because we're idealists. So the answer is...
Oh, yes. Actually, there was this weird connection. I was up last night with these pretty young people, actually in pretty powerful positions, but pretty young people, and they were being amazingly idealist. We're going to save everything. We're going to save this. We're going to save that. I said, well, you can't. You haven't got the money. The United States doesn't have the money to save everything. But then I couldn't convince them. So I said, okay, so you're going to be idealists? Fine. Let's go for really big things. You know, let's go for burying the highway. You know, that instinct you have to be idealists, apply it to things that are really magnificent projects and not so much the, you know, these essentially third-rate neighborhoods.
Right.
So anyways, they're first-rate, second-rate, third-rate, fourth-rate, fifth-rate neighborhoods. Just save what's better first. And if you want to really crash against difficult projects, if that's your personality type, then go after the highways. You know, John Norquist, our president and CEO at the Congress of the New Urbanism, is the world's #1 expert on taking highways down. And I hope he, you know, at the CNU, I hope that he gets, I hope he makes radical propositions. I think they might be well received.
One of my favorite YouTube comments on this video was 3 sentences. It said, anything can be fixed, be patient, get the manual. I see the Congress for the New Urbanism as the manual. Mm-hmm. Can you explain to people that aren't familiar with CNU, that live in Buffalo, what is the opportunity that CNU coming to Buffalo represents for them?
Well, this is an organization that arose out of experts actually wanting to meet each other. And, you know, 20-something years ago, there were people that were beginning to really look clearly at the disaster. And I think we were the first to actually develop techniques, not just write the books like Jane Jacobs, you know, the books like Leo Creer, but we actually came up, particularly as Americans, to come up with the techniques to revitalize the cities, and actually the suburbs as well. And we became the experts met each other, and it's an organization that has spiraled into growth, slowly, slowly, slowly. You know, it's never actually become a huge organization because the level of our discussion is very tough. You know, we call it like it is. It's not a feel-good kind of organization. We're nerds in a way. Some people say that I'm an expert at failure. You know, whenever I hear something that's failed, I go study it. I'm just as interested in failure as success. You know, if something didn't work, if a plan failed, something's losing value, I'm there, you know, to really find out what it is. So I think that the best planners are new urbanists. I certainly find that to be the case. Buffalo is so interesting, and the whole idea of the Rust Belt cities, I think, has such a future. You know, the focus on Detroit. And by the way, I mentioned Detroit. I don't think you can mention Detroit and Buffalo in the same breath. This place is in so much better shape. But what Detroit has, and I've been there quite a few times lately, is it has a huge amount of energy. And the reason, as far as I can tell, is that the young people are thriving there because no one is preventing them from thriving. You know, they're able to start businesses. You know, there are no inspectors. So they start businesses, they renovate things. It's not only just cheap real estate, it's that they can actually act. And that is the great lesson of Detroit. Detroit having much less than Buffalo does, probably has more vitality. And I would like, when I come here, to bring the lessons of Detroit, the positive lessons, and see how the protocols here, you know, the permits and the zoning and all this, can allow that kind of energy to happen. So that the millennial generation, you know, the under 30s, can actually act. And, you know, there's 80 million of them. It's where all the energy is in the country, and they're going to where they can act. Most places that used to be cool, the Californians, the Bostons, are so repressed now in terms of bureaucracy that they can do nothing but be artists. Everybody's an artist. I say, why are there so many artists in this generation? Well, because you can't do anything but art without a permit. It's the only thing. You can't even sell a cookie without a permit. So what are you supposed to do if you're an entrepreneur? And, but I think that cities that lighten the regulations, and by the way, one of the great initiatives in the next CNU might be, I hope it becomes very prominent, is lean urbanism. Like, how do we pull back these glaciers of bureaucracy, melt them down again to reveal what's really important, particularly so young people can act. And by the way, there's young people and immigrants. You know, the immigrants built this nation with very, very little supervision. And we still have immigrants, and they can't figure out how to navigate bureaucracy. They have, on top of it, they have the language problem. But the countries they come from, they build for themselves. These are people that know how to build. I know them, I'm an immigrant too. So, you know, I know the energy they have, and you say, well, why are you not doing what you naturally do? Well, we can't figure it out. Actually, they're actually doing it, just doing it illegally. They're renovating their stuff. They're always there at Home Depot, you know, buying stuff. What are you doing? And I think things need to be eased up for them. That's going to be, I hope it's an important agenda in the next CNU. I was excited originally about Buffalo coming here because I thought it actually needed a good dose of lean urbanism. Then I've come and I've realized there's a lot more. There are many more relevant topics and lessons. But my original interest was that. I thought it was a type of Detroit, and it's actually not. It's got a lot more going for it. Now, if you can just sort of, you know, if climate change can just get here sooner, so it gets warmer, there should be no problem.
Yeah, I mean, does our snowy winter really prevent us from being a great city? Because that's the other YouTube comment that you get is, yeah, you didn't show any snow, and well, it might be a good city except for it's snowy 8 months of the year. Well, does that just kill us?
Well, first of all, categorically not, because of course you have Toronto, and you have all the Canadian cities that are doing very well, and you have Chicago, you know. And bringing up Chicago, by the way, this is much warmer than Chicago. This doesn't have that sort of bitter wind, you know, that you have. So, no, I don't think the climate affects you, but it is awfully nice to not be cold. You know, that's you know, if what I saw here today, in terms of quality, blows the doors off Atlanta. You know, so what does Atlanta have? Better weather and an airport. And just to be very frank, because this is very new urbanism, the great, you know, any city that missed out on the big airport is actually working uphill. And of course, Buffalo doesn't have it. You know, St. Louis doesn't have it, etc. So you just have to try harder. But that's one of the things.
By the way, I disagree with you about Atlanta having better weather because I don't like living in a place that, as Counselor says, feels like you're living in a dog's mouth.
Yeah. 6
months of the year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And our summers are very moderate. It's rarely above 90. It's extremely rare.
Oh, well, that's good. I certainly have never been in Atlanta in the summer, so you know, there must be a reason for that. The other thing that actually I know nothing about, but is really fascinating, is the cross-border energy that comes, you know, with having Canada. You know, one of the really great nations of the world, you know, right across the water. I expect that Buffalo's doing a pretty good job. I notice a lot of Canadian flags here. You know, like you're already becoming one of these border cities where all the energy is, you know. Yeah. You know, that's good. Perhaps you could secede from New York State. I don't know. Maybe that's have you actually applied to Canada for citizenship?
Is that an example of a comment you'd like me to edit out?
Yes, please.
Thank you for joining us. And thank you for coming to Buffalo.
Okay, great. The whole city applies for citizenship in Canada. That would be.